A rich man rescued a homeless girl and hired her as a nurse for his sick son. He installed a camera. The night rain pounded mercilessly against the mansion's windows as Alexander Gutierrez watched the security footage for the 100th time. There she was, Claire Collins, the homeless woman he'd hired as his son's nurse, crouching in the rain to shield a lost child. Something in her eyes, a mix of fierce protection and profound sadness, had compelled him to stop his car that night. Now, weeks later, as he observed her through hidden cameras, Alexander wrestled with his conscience. Was she the angel his broken family needed, or was Marina right about her being an expert manipulator? Before we dive into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. If this is your first time discovering the channel, or you haven't subscribed yet, please support us by clicking the subscribe button. It truly means a lot to us. Thank you so much. The Gutierrez mansion stood as a towering testament to wealth and solitude on the city's prestigious north side, its imposing iron gates and perfectly manicured gardens serving as barriers between two worlds. Inside, despite the opulent furnishings and priceless artwork adorning every wall, a heavy silence lingered in the air, the kind that spoke of loneliness and unspoken pain. Emil Gutierrez's room on the second floor remained the heart of this magnificent prison. The 10-year-old boy's quarters were equipped with the finest medical equipment money could buy, monitors beeping steadily day and night. Yet no amount of expensive machinery could cure the emotional wounds that plagued the child. Since his mother's death 3 years ago, Emil had retreated into himself, refusing to speak except in whispers, his dark eyes carrying a sadness far too profound for his young age. The staff moved through the mansion like shadows, their footsteps muffled by thick Persian carpets. They performed their duties with precision but maintained a careful distance from the family's pain. The cook prepared elaborate meals that Emil barely touched. The gardener tended to roses that no one stopped to smell. The housekeepers dusted rooms that rarely saw visitors. Each of them knew their place in this carefully orchestrated dance of wealth and sorrow. Alexander's study served as his sanctuary and prison. Behind its heavy oak doors, he spent countless hours buried in work, avoiding the echoing emptiness of the house. Photographs of happier times lined his desk: his wedding day, Emil's birth, family vacations, all frozen moments of joy that seemed to mock the present. The successful businessman had built an empire, but he couldn't heal his own son. The contrast between the mansion's grandeur and its emotional poverty became most apparent at night. While other homes in the neighborhood glowed with warmth and life, the Gutierrez estate remained coldly illuminated by security lights, its windows dark except for Emil's room, where soft night lights kept the demons at bay. The social divide was equally stark beyond the mansion's walls. In the same city where the Gutierrez family's name adorned hospital wings and university buildings, people like Claire struggled to survive on the streets. The local news praised Alexander's philanthropic contributions while ignoring the growing homeless population seeking shelter under bridges his company had built. This was the world Claire Collins stepped into, a world where appearance meant everything and trust was a luxury few could afford. The mansion's staff watched her arrival with mixed emotions: sympathy for her obvious poverty, suspicion of her sudden elevation to nurse, and curiosity about how long she would last in this gilded cage. Marina, the estate manager, observed it all with calculating eyes. Her office, strategically positioned near the main entrance, allowed her to monitor every movement, every whispered conversation. She'd maintained order in the household since Mrs. Gutierrez's death, and she wasn't about to let a street girl disrupt the delicate balance she'd created. But perhaps the most telling aspect of the setting was the network of security cameras Alexander had installed throughout the mansion. Every corner, every hallway, every room except the private bathrooms was under constant surveillance. He claimed it was for Emil's safety, but the cameras also revealed something else: a father's paranoia, a widower's fear, and a rich man's distrust of the world that had taken so much from him despite his wealth. This was the stage where their story would unfold, a place where wealth and poverty collided, where love and suspicion danced a dangerous waltz, and where a broken family's healing would depend on their willingness to look beyond the surface and trust in something money couldn't buy: the human heart. 5 years ago, Claire Collins wore crisp white scrubs and commanded respect in one of the city's most prestigious pediatric wards. Her skill with difficult cases had earned her the nickname the Child Whisperer among her colleagues. Children who refused all other nurses would calm at her touch, and parents fought to have her assigned to their cases. But one tragic night changed everything. It started with a desperate mother rushing into the emergency room, cradling a convulsing toddler. Claire recognized Marina Villarreal, immediately the wife of a prominent hospital board member. Their eyes met briefly before Claire sprang into action, her hands steady as she tried to save the child. Despite following every protocol, despite working tirelessly for hours, the little girl's condition deteriorated. When the child flatlined, Marina's anguished screams echoed through the hospital corridors. The investigation that followed was swift and merciless. Marina, grief-stricken and influential, accused Claire of negligence. Hospital records were mysteriously altered, showing medication errors that Claire knew she hadn't made. Colleagues who once praised her skills suddenly couldn't meet her eyes. The hospital board, eager to protect their reputation and appease one of their own, made Claire their scapegoat. But losing her career was only the beginning. The same week she was fired, Child Protective Services arrived at her modest apartment. Gabriel, her 12-year-old brother whom she'd raised since their parents' death, was taken away. The authorities cited her medical negligence and sudden unemployment as proof of her unfitness as a guardian. Her protests fell on deaf ears, and Gabriel disappeared into the labyrinthine foster care system. Claire spent every penny of her savings on lawyers, fighting both the medical board and family court. But Marina's influence ran deep, and doors closed in Claire's face wherever she turned. Each appeal was denied, each request for information about Gabriel met with bureaucratic silence. As her resources dwindled, so did her options. But the descent into homelessness wasn't sudden but gradual: a missed rent payment here, a maxed-out credit card there. Soon the woman who once saved children's lives found herself sleeping in sheltered doorways, her nursing license suspended but still carried like a talisman in her worn backpack. Yet even on the streets, Claire couldn't stop being a healer. She became known among the homeless community for her gentle care of their injuries and illnesses, using the few supplies she could scrounge. During those years, Claire never stopped searching for Gabriel. She haunted foster care offices, followed leads from social workers who took pity on her, and posted countless looking for messages online. The photo she carried of them together, taken on his 12th birthday, just weeks before the separation, grew worn at the edges from constant handling. What no one knew, not even Marina, was that Claire had discovered something crucial about that fatal night in the emergency room. In her desperate review of the case, she'd found inconsistencies in the child's initial symptoms that suggested the tragedy might have been preventable, not due to her care, but due to earlier decisions made before the child reached the hospital. But by then, no one would listen to a disgraced nurse living on the streets. The years of hardship had changed Claire physically. Her once neat appearance became weathered, her hands roughened, but they couldn't dim the compassion in her eyes or break her spirit. She continued to help others whenever she could, even sharing her meager food with stray dogs. The other homeless people called her Angel, never knowing she once wore a different kind of white uniform. This was the Claire that Alexander Gutierrez saw that rainy night, a woman who, despite having every reason to be bitter, still stopped to help a lost child. What he couldn't see was the weight of her past, the burden of loss she carried, or the ironic twist of fate that had brought her to the doorstep of the woman who had orchestrated her downfall. Marina, now the Gutierrez estate manager, didn't recognize the homeless woman she'd destroyed years ago. But Claire recognized her instantly. Yet, when offered the position as Emil's nurse, Claire accepted not out of revenge but because she saw in his eyes the same pain she'd seen in Gabriel's the day they were separated. In this strange twist of fate, she found a chance not just to heal a child, but perhaps to heal herself as well. Alexander Gutierrez hadn't always been the austere figure who now haunted his mansion's halls. Before his wife Sarah's death, he was known for his warm smile and generous spirit. Photos in old society magazines showed him laughing, his arm around Sarah, their young son Emil beaming between them. Now, at 43, silver threaded his dark hair, and lines of worry creased his once handsome face. His empire of hospitals and medical research facilities had expanded, but his heart had contracted, protecting itself from further loss. The death of his wife in a car accident 3 years ago had transformed him into a man obsessed with control. Every decision, every hire, every minute of Emil's medical care had to pass through his scrutiny. Yet beneath his stern exterior lay a crushing guilt. He had been working late the night of Sarah's accident, had asked her to drive home alone from the charity gala. The weight of that decision haunted his every waking moment. Emil, once a vibrant child who filled the mansion with laughter, now spoke only in whispers. His condition, a combination of anxiety and progressive muscular weakness, baffled specialists. Some suggested it was psychosomatic, triggered by his mother's death. Others prescribed endless medications and therapies. At 10 years old, he had endured more treatments than most people face in a lifetime. His large brown eyes, so like his mother's, watched the world with a wisdom and wariness beyond his years. Marina Villarreal maintained a facade of elegant efficiency, but beneath her designer suits lay a heart twisted by grief and guilt. The loss of her daughter had driven her to destroy Claire's life, but the truth she carried was far darker. The child's death had been preceded by Marina's own medical negligence, a crucial detail she had buried beneath false accusations. Her position at the Gutierrez mansion served dual purposes: financial security and proximity to Alexander, whom she had grown to view as her last chance at the family she'd lost. The mansion's staff formed a complex hierarchy of loyalties and secrets. Sophia, the head housekeeper, had served the family for 20 years and viewed Emil as a surrogate grandson. Her quiet support would prove crucial in the days to come. James, the security chief, maintained the extensive camera system but harbored doubts about its necessity. Maria, the cook, watched everything and said little, but her kitchen became a sanctuary for those who needed a moment of warmth in the cold mansion. Dr. Reynolds, Emil's primary physician, made weekly visits that left everyone more frustrated than enlightened. His inability to diagnose the root of Emil's condition led him to defer to Alexander's demands for more tests, more medications, more restrictions. Yet he alone held records that would later connect crucial dots in Claire's past. But perhaps the most complex character was Sarah Gutierrez herself. Though deceased, her presence lingered in every corner of the mansion. Her portrait hung in the main hall, her gentle smile watching over the household. Her diaries, locked away in Alexander's study, contained observations about Emil's early symptoms that no one had yet discovered, and most importantly, she had known Marina before her death, known things that could unravel everything. The neighborhood itself seemed to be a character, with its manicured lawns and judgmental residents. They whispered about the Gutierrez family's troubles, about the mysterious new nurse, about Marina's growing influence. Their gossip would later fuel the flames of scandal when Claire's past came to light. Each character carried their own wounds, their own secrets, their own reasons for either helping or hindering the unlikely bond forming between Claire and Emil. They moved through the mansion like pieces on a chessboard, some protecting the king, others plotting to topple him, all of them unaware that their carefully constructed world was about to change forever. Even Gabriel, though absent, was a powerful presence in the story. His experiences in the foster system had hardened him, taught him to trust no one. The sweet 12-year-old who loved his sister's pancakes had become a guarded teenager, carrying his own secrets and pain. When he finally appeared, he would bring with him revelations that would shake the foundations of everything everyone thought they knew. This complex web of characters, each with their own motivations and secrets, would soon be tested in ways none of them could have anticipated. The arrival of Claire Collins wasn't just a change in Emil's care, it was the first domino in a sequence that would force every resident of the Gutierrez mansion to confront their past, their prejudices, and their carefully hidden truths. The rain fell in sheets across the city, turning streets into rivers and drowning out the usual urban noise. Inside his Mercedes, Alexander Gutierrez watched through rain-streaked windows as his driver navigated the treacherous roads. Another late night at the office, another evening of avoiding his empty home and his son's silent suffering. The rhythmic swish of windshield wipers matched his heartbeat, steady but hollow. His driver's sharp exclamation jerked Alexander from his thoughts. Through the downpour, headlights illuminated a scene that seemed almost surreal: a woman in sodden clothes, crouched protectively over a small child. They stood in the middle of the road, the woman using her own body as a shield against the rain. "Stop the car," Alexander commanded, something about the scene triggering memories of Sarah's compassion for strays and lost causes. As he stepped out into the deluge, his Italian leather shoes immediately filled with water, but he barely noticed. The woman looked up, and their eyes met. Later, Alexander would recall this moment with perfect clarity: the way the rain plastered her dark hair to her face, the fierce protectiveness in her stance, the startling intelligence in her eyes. Despite her ragged appearance, she held herself with a dignity that spoke of better days. "He's lost," she explained, her voice carrying above the storm. "Found him crying behind the convenience store. I've been trying to find a police station," but she gestured helplessly at their surroundings, where neon signs blurred into watercolor smears through the rain. The child, no more than 6, clung to her like a lifeline. Alexander noticed how she'd wrapped her own threadbare jacket around the boy, leaving herself exposed to the elements. It was the kind of instinctive, nurturing gesture Sarah would have made. "Get in the car," he found himself saying. "Both of you. We'll sort this out somewhere dry." The words surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise her. Alexander Gutierrez, who triple-checked every employee's background, who installed cameras to monitor his own staff, was inviting strangers, homeless strangers, into his car. The woman hesitated, and in that hesitation, Alexander saw something that intrigued him further. She wasn't afraid for herself, her concern was entirely for the child. "I'm Alexander Gutierrez," he added, as if his name might lend credibility to his offer. "We can take him to the police station together." "Claire," she replied simply, then guided the boy toward the car with practiced ease. Alexander noticed how she spoke softly to the child, explaining each move before she made it. The boy responded to her gentle authority, his terror gradually subsiding. Inside the car's warm interior, Alexander studied them in the rearview mirror. Despite her drenched appearance, Claire maintained a professional demeanor as she checked the boy for signs of illness or injury. Her movements were precise, practiced medical training, he realized with growing interest. "You were a nurse," he stated rather than asked. Claire's hands stilled for a moment, then continued their assessment of the child. Was she acknowledged? A world of pain in that single syllable. Alexander felt the weight of Emil's medical file in his briefcase, filled with inconclusive tests and ineffective treatments. He watched as the boy in the backseat gradually relaxed under Claire's care, his frightened tears subsiding into occasional sniffles. "I have a son," Alexander found himself saying. "He's unwell. We've been through dozens of nurses, but none seemed to understand him." He paused, aware he was about to make either the most brilliant or most foolish decision of his life. "Would you consider?" "Mr. Gutierrez," Claire interrupted, her voice gentle but firm, "you don't know anything about me." "I know what I see," he replied, thinking of how she'd used her own body to shield a stranger's child from the rain. Sometimes that's enough. What he didn't say was how her actions reminded him of Sarah, how the compassion in her eyes spoke louder than any resume, how desperately he needed someone who could reach his son the way she'd reached this frightened child. As they approached the police station, Alexander made his offer formal: a position in his household, caring for Emil, room, board, salary, a chance to rebuild. Claire's response was interrupted by their arrival, but as she helped the lost child into the station, Alexander saw her considering his words. Neither of them could have known that this rainy night meeting was being recorded by traffic cameras, footage that would later become crucial evidence in the battle to come. Claire's arrival at the Gutierrez mansion ignited immediate ripples of tension. Walking through the ornate front doors in her thrift store clothes, she felt every critical gaze, heard every whispered judgment. Marina, immaculate in her designer suit, greeted her with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Gutierrez must be very charitable," Marina remarked, her voice dripping with barely concealed disdain as she led Claire through the mansion. "Though I must say, it's unusual to hire someone without proper credentials or background checks." Neither woman acknowledged the deeper recognition simmering beneath their exchange, the shared history that connected them through tragedy. Emil's first meeting with Claire set the tone for the challenges ahead. The boy sat in his wheelchair by the window, deliberately turning away as they entered. Emil, Marina announced with artificial brightness, "This is Claire, your new nurse." The boy's response was a cold silence that filled the room. Claire approached slowly, noting the untouched breakfast tray, the methodically arranged medication bottles, the drawings of dark forests scattered across his desk. Instead of forcing conversation, she simply sat in the chair opposite him and began folding one of his discarded papers into an origami crane. "Your mother taught you to make these," she said quietly, noticing the half-finished paper cranes hidden behind his books. Emil's head turned slightly, surprise flickering across his features. No other nurse had noticed this detail about him. "She's dead," Emil whispered, his first words of the day carrying both pain and challenge. "Like all my birds on his windowsill, a line of crooked paper cranes gathered dust." "Then perhaps," Claire replied, placing her finished crane beside his, "we should make new ones that can fly." She didn't push further, didn't demand his attention or cooperation. Instead, she simply began another crane, her fingers moving with deliberate care. The staff watched this interaction and others like it with mixed reactions. The cook, Maria, saw how Claire saved portions of her meals to share with the stray cats behind the mansion. Sophia, the head housekeeper, observed her treating Emil's stuffed animals with the same respect she'd give real patients. James, the security chief, noticed how she spoke to everyone with equal kindness, regardless of their position. But it was Marina who watched most carefully, her anxiety growing as she recognized the same gentle competence that had once made Claire a beloved pediatric nurse. When Emil allowed Claire to help him with his physical therapy without the usual screaming protests, Marina's hands shook as she typed an urgent email to her contacts, seeking any dirt they could find on Claire's past. Alexander, though initially confident in his impulsive hiring decision, found himself increasingly uncertain. Through the security cameras, he watched Claire's patient interactions with Emil, her quiet competence, her small acts of kindness. But he also saw how she wandered the halls at night, sometimes stopping to stare at family photographs with an unreadable expression. "We know nothing about her," Marina reminded him during their daily briefing. "She could be dangerous. She could be unstable. She could be exactly what Emil needs," Alexander interrupted, even as doubt gnawed at him. That night he added more cameras to the surveillance system. The turning point came on Claire's fifth night at the mansion. Emil's nightmares, a regular occurrence since his mother's death, brought the household running to his room. But this time, instead of the usual scene of panic and sedatives, they found Claire sitting on the floor beside Emil's bed, teaching him breathing exercises between soft stories about constellations visible from his window. "Mum used to do that," Emil whispered, his small hand gripping Claire's sleeve, The stars, she knew them all. Claire's response, caught clearly on the security footage, would later haunt Alexander. Sometimes the people we lose become stars themselves, watching over us. We just have to remember to look up. Marina, watching from the doorway, saw her carefully constructed influence beginning to crumble. That same night, she made a phone call that would set in motion events none of them could have anticipated. By the end of the first week, battle lines had been drawn. The staff divided into factions, those who saw Claire's genuine care for Emil and those who, led by Marina, viewed her as a threat to the established order. Emil himself remained a complicated mix of longing and resistance, drawing closer to Claire even as he fought against replacing his mother's memory. Alexander found himself torn between his growing trust in Claire's positive effect on Emil and his instinctive caution about her mysterious past. The security footage he reviewed each night showed him a woman whose gentle consistency was slowly bringing his son back to life, but his fears whispered that anything too good to be true usually was. What none of them knew was that Claire had recognized more than just Marina. In Sarah's photographs throughout the house, in the medical files she glimpsed, in Emil's symptoms, she saw patterns that connected to that fatal night 5 years ago, connections that would soon shake their world to its core. As autumn crept into winter, subtle changes began transforming the Gutierrez mansion. Emil's room, once shrouded in perpetual silence, now occasionally echoed with quiet laughter. The paper cranes multiplied their wings, catching sunlight from windows that stayed open more often. Claire's approach to Emil's care differed radically from previous nurses. Instead of forcing him into rigid therapy routines, she wove exercises into games and stories. His physical therapy became treasure hunts through the mansion's corridors. Medical treatments turned into secret missions, complete with code names and rewards. "You're doing it wrong," Emil had declared one morning, watching Claire arrange his medications. "They're supposed to be in rainbow order." His voice carried the weight of countless battles with previous nurses. "Actually," Claire replied, not missing a beat, "I'm organizing them like a symphony." See, she lined up the pills, explaining how each color represented a different musical note. By the end of the week, Emil was taking his medicine while humming the tune they'd created together. Alexander found himself lingering longer in the doorway during these moments, captivated by the subtle magic unfolding in his son's room. Through the security monitors, he watched Claire and Emil create their own small world of shared secrets and private jokes. He noticed how his son's medical readings improved when Claire was around, how the nightmares became less frequent. One evening, passing Emil's room, Alexander heard something that stopped him in his tracks: his son's laugh, full and genuine, a sound he hadn't heard since Sarah's death. Inside, Claire was acting out a story using Emil's stuffed animals as characters, complete with different voices and dramatic gestures. "Dad," Emil called out, spotting him in the doorway. Claire's telling the story of how Sir Bear saved the kingdom of Pillowland, the simple act of his son initiating conversation, wanting to share something with him, made Alexander's throat tight with emotion. Even the staff began to thaw. Maria started leaving extra portions of food in the kitchen, noticing how Claire often missed meals while caring for Emil. Sophia found herself sharing old stories about Sarah, drawn in by Claire's genuine interest in understanding the family she served. James discovered his security footage increasingly filled with moments of healing rather than suspicious activity. But it was Alexander's own barriers that faced the most profound challenge. He found himself seeking Claire's opinion during medical consultations, valuing her intuitive understanding of Emil's needs. Their discussions about Emil's care grew longer, more personal, often extending into shared cups of coffee in the quiet hours after Emil slept. "He talks about her all the time," Claire said one such evening, referring to Sarah. "He needs that to keep her memory alive without letting it paralyze him." The insight struck Alexander deeply. He'd been so focused on moving forward, on fixing everything, that he'd never considered the healing power of looking back. Marina watched this growing closeness with increasing alarm. Her carefully maintained position as Alexander's closest confidante was slipping away. She observed how his eyes followed Claire when she wasn't looking, how he smiled more frequently, how his rigid control began to soften. "I'm concerned," Marina said during one of their meetings, her voice careful. "Emil is becoming too dependent on her. What if she leaves? What if she's not who she seems?" But even as she spoke, Alexander was remembering the previous night's security footage. Claire sitting beside Emil's bed, reading from Sarah's old astronomy book, teaching him to find the constellations his mother had loved. The most significant shift came during a particularly bad night for Emil. His muscles had seized painfully, a common occurrence, but this time the usual medications weren't helping. As the boy writhed in agony, Claire did something unprecedented. She began singing softly, an old lullaby about stars and dreams. Alexander, watching through the cameras, froze when he recognized the melody. It was Sarah's song, the one she'd always sung to Emil. He rushed to the room, expecting Emil to be upset by this invasion of his mother's sacred memory. Instead, he found his son relaxed into Claire's comfort, tears still wet on his cheeks, but the pain easing from his body. "How did you know that song?" he asked Claire later. "I didn't," she replied softly. "Sometimes love speaks its own language." That night, reviewing the security footage as usual, Alexander found himself focusing not on potential threats but on the small moments of healing. Emil's smiles, Claire's patient kindness, the gradual return of warmth to his home. For the first time, he considered turning off the cameras. What none of them realized was that these growing bonds would soon be tested in ways they couldn't imagine. Marina had already set her plan in motion, and the piece they'd found was as fragile as the paper cranes that now danced in Emil's window. If this story touched your heart, there are many more emotional journeys waiting to be shared. Hit subscribe to join our community of storytellers and dream believers. Each week we bring you real stories of love, redemption, and the unbreakable human spirit. Don't miss out. Subscribe now and enable notifications. The revelation about Gabriel came on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Claire was helping Emil with his stretching exercises when Marina strode into the room, her heels clicking ominously against the hardwood floor. The smile on her face made Claire's heart skip a beat. "I think you'll want to see this," Marina announced, placing a manila folder on Emil's desk. Her eyes glittered with barely concealed triumph as she stepped back, watching Claire's reaction. Inside the folder was a single photograph of a teenage boy, about 15, standing in front of a run-down building. Though older, harder, the eyes that stared back at Claire were unmistakable. Gabriel. Her hands trembled as she touched the image. "Interesting, isn't it?" Marina's voice dripped with false sympathy. A troubled youth, living with a foster family just across town. Such a shame about his past, abandoned by his sister, left to fend for himself in the system. Claire's head snapped up, her face draining of color. "What did you tell him?" "Only the truth," Marina replied smoothly. "How his sister chose a career over family. How she left him behind for a better life." He was quite receptive to the story. Emil, watching from his wheelchair, sensed the tension crackling between the women. Claire, his small voice, carried worry. "What's wrong?" But Claire couldn't answer. The room was spinning, Marina's words echoing in her head. For 5 years she'd searched for Gabriel, and now he was here, poisoned against her by the very woman who had destroyed their lives. "Where is he?" Claire demanded, her professional composure cracking. Marina's smile widened. "He doesn't want to see you. In fact, he was quite clear about his feelings toward his abandoning sister. But if you'd like to make things interesting," she pulled out another document. "I have temporary guardianship of him now. Funny how things work out, isn't it?" The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Marina had not only found Gabriel first, but had positioned herself as his protector, turning him against Claire before she could even reach him. "Alexander, reviewing the security footage later that evening, would be struck by what happened next. Instead of breaking down, Claire squared her shoulders and turned back to Emil. "Let's finish your exercises," she said softly, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. But Emil reached for her hand. "Some battle," she told him, managing a small smile. Take more than one day to win, she continued the therapy session as if her world hadn't just shattered, hiding her pain behind gentle encouragement of Emil's progress. That night, after Emil was asleep, Alexander found Claire in the mansion's garden. She sat on a stone bench, Gabriel's photograph clutched in her hands, her tears finally flowing freely. "How long have you known?" he asked, settling beside her. "About Marina?" "Since the first day," Claire admitted. "She was the one who took everything from me. My career, my brother, my life." The story poured out of her: the tragic night at the hospital, the false accusations, the desperate search for Gabriel. Alexander listened, his mind racing. The cameras had shown him Claire's dedication, her genuine care for Emil. But this revelation cast everything in a new light. "Why didn't you tell me?" Claire looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the garden lights. "Would you have believed me? The homeless woman accusing your trusted estate manager?" He couldn't answer. They both knew the truth. "Besides," she continued, her voice strengthening, "this was never about revenge. It was about Emil, about helping him heal. I couldn't let my past interfere with that." Alexander studied her face, seeing not the threat Marina had warned him about, but a woman who had lost everything yet still chose compassion over bitterness. "We'll find a way," he said finally, "to reach Gabriel, to show him the truth." What neither of them knew was that Gabriel was watching this exchange from Marina's office window. She had brought him to the mansion specifically for this purpose, to see his sister's apparent success and comfort while he had suffered in foster homes. "See," Marina whispered to him. "She's found herself a new family, a wealthy one. She doesn't need you anymore." Gabriel's fists clenched as he watched Alexander comfort his sister. Yet something in Claire's posture, in the way she held his photograph, stirred memories he'd tried to bury of pancake breakfasts, of homework help, of the sister who had once been his whole world. Marina smiled in satisfaction, but she had miscalculated. The seeds of doubt she'd planted would soon grow into something very different from what she intended. The photograph Marina had shown Claire was only the beginning. What no one knew was that Gabriel had his own reasons for playing along with Marina's scheme. Every harsh word he spoke against his sister, every show of loyalty to Marina, was carefully calculated. In the privacy of his foster home, Gabriel maintained a secret journal not of teenage angst, but of evidence. Dates, conversations, screenshots of emails Marina had carelessly left visible. Most importantly, he had recorded her confession about the night his sister's life was destroyed. "I had to protect myself," Marina had told him during one of their early meetings, her guard lowered by what she perceived as his complete allegiance. "The hospital would have investigated if they'd known the truth that I'd given my daughter medication before bringing her in. Claire suspected, but I couldn't let her reveal that." Gabriel had nodded sympathetically while his hidden phone recorded every word. Each piece of evidence he gathered was meticulously backed up and sent to a secure email account. But his investigation came with a terrible price: he had to maintain his role as the bitter, vengeful brother. Meanwhile, Emil had begun his own silent observation. Despite his young age, his forced isolation had made him unusually perceptive. He noticed how Marina's smiles never reached her eyes, how Claire's hands trembled whenever she saw Gabriel's photo, how his father's gaze lingered on Claire when he thought no one was watching. Most crucially, Emil remembered something no one had thought to ask him about. The night his mother died, she had visited Marina. He had overheard fragments of their heated discussions, something about a hospital, a cover-up, a nurse who had been wronged. Alexander, too, was conducting his own investigation. The security cameras had captured more than just daily activities. They had recorded Marina's gradual transformation from trusted employee to something more sinister. But late at night, he reviewed years of footage, noting patterns he'd previously missed. One particular clip caught his attention: Marina in Sarah's room shortly before the fatal accident, removing something from her medical file. The timestamp matched the night Sarah had discovered something that had greatly upset her the last night of her life. But it was Claire who carried the heaviest secret. During her rounds in Emil's room, she had noticed something in his symptoms that connected directly to Sarah's death. The mysterious illness that plagued him matched the side effects of certain medications, the same ones that had been present in Marina's daughter's system years ago. His symptoms, Claire wrote in her private notes, suggest long-term exposure to beta blockers, but they're not in his prescribed medication list. Someone's been adding something to his food or drinks. The pieces were there, waiting to be connected: Marina's daughter's death, Sarah's accident, Emil's mysterious illness, Claire's disgrace, but connecting them openly would put them all at risk. One evening, as Claire checked Emil's vital signs, she noticed him studying her intently. "Mum's diary," he whispered, so quietly she almost missed it. In Dad's study, she wrote about Marina's daughter. Claire's hands stilled on his wrist. "How do you know this?" "I heard them fighting. Mom and Marina." The night before, his voice trailed off, but his meaning was clear. The revelation hit Claire like a physical blow. Sarah hadn't died in a simple car accident. She had discovered something about Marina, something worth killing for. At that moment, the security camera in Emil's room captured a seemingly innocent scene: a nurse checking a patient's pulse. But beneath that mundane image lay a web of secrets that would soon shake the Gutierrez mansion to its foundation. In Marina's office, she reviewed her own surveillance footage, unaware that she wasn't the only one gathering evidence. She watched Gabriel's apparent hatred of Claire with satisfaction, never noticing how his eyes tracked every document on her desk, how his phone occasionally peeked from his pocket. "Everything's falling into place," she told her reflection in the window. "Soon, Alexander will see Claire for what she really is. History repeats itself." But Marina had forgotten one crucial detail: the truth, like water, always finds its way to the surface. And in the Gutierrez mansion, that truth was rising faster than anyone realized. Gabriel, watching his sister through Marina's window, felt the weight of his secret evidence like a physical burden. Every harsh word he spoke to Claire carved another wound in his heart, but he knew he needed more time. Just a little longer to gather the final pieces that would not only exonerate his sister but expose Marina's years of manipulation and murder. What none of them realized was that Emil, the seemingly helpless child at the center of it all, held the key to unraveling everything. In his innocent questions and careful observations, he was unknowingly collecting the final pieces of a puzzle that would soon shatter their carefully constructed facades. The mansion's atmosphere grew increasingly tense as the web of secrets tightened around its inhabitants. Alexander found himself analyzing every interaction, his initial trust in Claire warring with years of ingrained caution and Marina's constant insinuations. Through his wall of security monitors, he watched 3 different scenes unfold simultaneously. In Emil's room, Claire was helping his son reach for a book, her gentle encouragement bringing forth a determined smile he hadn't seen in years. In the garden, Gabriel lurked with a camera phone, supposedly documenting Claire's suspicious behavior for Marina, though his hands shook each time he photographed his sister. In her office, Marina was making yet another secret phone call, her lips forming words the cameras couldn't quite catch. "You have to understand my position," Alexander told Claire during one of their evening discussions. "Emil's all I have left. I can't risk." "Can't risk what?" Claire interrupted, her voice carrying an edge he'd never heard before. "Trusting someone? Letting someone care for him? Or is it yourself you're protecting?" The question hung between them, too accurate to dismiss, too painful to acknowledge. Before Alexander could respond, Emil's voice carried from his room, calling for Claire. She left without another word, leaving Alexander to confront his own reflexive suspicions. The staff's loyalty had splintered into factions. Sophia, the head housekeeper, watched Claire with increasingly concerned eyes, noting how the young woman grew thinner, more haunted, yet never wavered in her care for Emil. One morning, she found Claire asleep in Emil's room, still holding his hand after a night of fever. "She's not eating," Sophia reported to Alexander. "She gives most of her food to the boy, says he needs the strength more." The unspoken comparison to Sarah's similar selflessness hung in the air. Maria, the cook, had begun leaving small packages of food outside Claire's door, her maternal instincts warring with Marina's strict instructions to maintain distance. James, the security chief, found himself accidentally deleting footage that might be misconstrued against Claire, though he couldn't explain why. Emil, despite his young age, sensed the growing strain. "Why doesn't father trust you?" he asked Claire one night as she tucked him in. "You make the pain go away. Mum would have trusted you." Claire's hands stilled on his blanket. Sometimes, she answered carefully, people who have lost a lot find it hard to believe in good things again, even when those things are right in front of them. The most devastating blow to trust came during a heated confrontation in Alexander's study. Marina had presented a series of photographs Claire at night, apparently searching through files in his office. Gabriel, looking distressed during their few interactions, mysterious phone calls from Claire's room. "She's gathering information," Marina insisted, "building a case for something, perhaps even planning to take Emil." "Stop!" Alexander's voice cut through her accusations. He stared at the security screens, where Claire was currently reading to Emil, her free hand absently massaging his perpetually painful muscles. "Just stop." But doubt, once planted, grows like a weed. That night, Alexander added more cameras, including one in Claire's room, a violation of privacy that made him sick, even as he authorized it. What the cameras captured, however, wasn't conspiracy but heartbreak. Late at night, Claire would take out Gabriel's photo, tracing his features while tears fell silently. She wrote letters she never sent, spoke to an empty room, practicing explanations she couldn't give. Through it all, Emil watched and listened. His keen mind catalogued every whispered conversation, every tense exchange. One evening, as Claire helped him with his exercises, he made a decision. "I know about the extra medicine," he said quietly. Claire froze. "What medicine?" "The ones in my juice every morning." When Marina thinks no one's watching, his dark eyes met hers steadily. "It makes the pain worse." "But if I tell father, he won't believe me, will he?" The truth of a child's perception struck Claire like a physical blow. Emil had known all along about Marina's manipulation, about the source of his mysterious symptoms, about the adult's tangled web of suspicion and fear. That night, reviewing the security footage, Alexander saw something that shook him to his core. In Emil's room, his son had taken Claire's hand and pressed it to his heart, a gesture of absolute trust he hadn't shown anyone since Sarah's death. "You'll protect me?" Emil's voice came clearly through the speakers, "like you protected Gabriel." Claire's response was barely audible, "Until my last breath." It was then that Alexander realized his elaborate security system had captured everything except what mattered most, the simple truth of love and loyalty playing out right before his eyes. But this realization came dangerously close to being too late, for Marina's final plan was already in motion. Marina's orchestration of suspicion reached new heights as she implemented her master plan. Anonymous letters began arriving at the mansion, each containing fragments of Claire's past, old newspaper clippings about the hospital incident, statements from witnesses, claiming to have seen her stealing medications, carefully edited photographs suggesting current misconduct. The board of directors is concerned, Marina informed Alexander one morning, placing another stack of letters on his desk. "A former nurse with a history of negligence, working with your vulnerable son, the hospital's reputation." The hospital's reputation, Alexander interrupted sharply. Seems to be your primary concern lately. He'd begun noticing how often Marina mentioned the hospital board. How many of her sources traced back to that fatal night 5 years ago? Meanwhile, Gabriel's double game grew increasingly dangerous. Each day he reported Claire's activities to Marina, while secretly documenting Marina's manipulations. The strain of betraying his sister showed in his deteriorating health and behavior. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his hands shook constantly. She's planning something, he told Marina, hating himself for the words even as he spoke them. I saw her looking at Emil's medical records again. What he didn't mention was how he'd also seen Claire's tears when she discovered the altered medication doses in those records. The pressure began affecting everyone in different ways. Claire threw herself into Emil's care with almost desperate intensity, as if she could protect him through sheer force of will. Her medical expertise, once hidden behind a careful facade of simple nursing, began showing through as she questioned treatment plans and suggested alternative therapies. These medications, she confronted Dr. Reynolds during one of his visits, are contraindicated for his symptoms. Unless someone's adding something we don't know about. Her eyes briefly met Emil's across the room, acknowledging their shared secret. The doctor shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Marina, who hovered nearby. The treatment plan has been approved by the hospital board. The same board that protected Marina 5 years ago. Claire's quiet question landed like a bomb in the room. For a moment, no one moved. Then Marina stepped forward, her smile razor-sharp. I think, she said coldly, it's time to discuss your continuing employment here, Claire. Alexander, watching through his cameras, noticed something odd in that moment. How Dr. Reynolds flinched at Claire's words, how Marina's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her phone. Small tells that suggested deeper currents beneath the surface. Emil, far from being the helpless child everyone assumed, began his own quiet rebellion. He refused medications unless Claire checked them first. He complained of feeling worse after Marina's visits. Most significantly, he started keeping a diary, recording everything he observed with a child's brutal honesty. Marina put something in my juice, he wrote. It makes my legs hurt more, but she tells father it's proof I need more treatment at her hospital. The mansion staff found themselves caught in the crossfire. Sophia discovered her access to certain areas of the house restricted. Maria was instructed to report any conversations she overheard in the kitchen. James received strict orders to focus camera surveillance on Claire's movements. But it was Gabriel who faced the greatest challenge. During one of his report sessions with Marina, he nearly gave everything away when she casually mentioned Claire's upcoming accident. Accidents happen all the time, Marina mused, studying her perfectly manicured nails. Especially in homes with so many stairs. Such a tragedy when caretakers become careless. But Gabriel's phone, hidden in his pocket, recorded everything while his face remained carefully blank. But inside, he was screaming. The evidence he'd gathered was damning but not yet complete enough to guarantee Marina's conviction. He needed more time, but Claire was running out of it. The tension reached a breaking point during a charity gala hosted at the mansion. The hospital board members were in attendance, along with social workers Marina had carefully cultivated. Claire, required to attend as Emil's nurse, found herself under constant scrutiny. Such a shame about your past troubles, one board member commented, swirling his champagne. Marina has told us everything. The emphasis on everything made it clear what he meant. As conversations grew more pointed and glances more hostile, Emil watched from his wheelchair, his young face tight with worry. He saw how Claire's hands shook as she adjusted his blanket, how Gabriel lurked in corners taking photos while looking physically ill, how his father kept glancing between Claire and Marina with growing confusion. Then Marina made her master stroke. In the middle of the gala, she arranged for a former colleague of Claire's to arrive, someone who had testified against her during the hospital investigation. Tell them, Marina urged the nervous woman. Tell them what you saw that night." The woman began speaking, reciting a practice story about medication errors and negligence. But as she talked, Emil suddenly spoke up, his clear voice cutting through the murmurs. "You're lying," he announced, "just like Marina lies about what she puts in my juice." The room fell silent. Marina's face went white. Gabriel's hidden phone recorded everything, and Alexander, standing by the security monitors, finally began to see the whole picture. The gala ended in chaos, but the real damage was done. The careful balance of power had shifted, and now all the players would be forced to show their hands. Marina's campaign of tension had worked too well. Instead of breaking Claire, it had exposed the cracks in her own carefully constructed facade. That night, as the last guests left, Alexander found himself reviewing years of security footage with new eyes, while Emil wrote in his diary, and Gabriel added another damning recording to his collection. Claire, alone in her room, made a decision she'd been avoiding for weeks. The time for passive resistance was over. Nobody slept that night in the Gutierrez mansion. They all knew that tomorrow would bring a reckoning that would change everything. In the aftermath of the gala's chaos, unexpected alliances began to form within the mansion's walls. Emil, showing wisdom beyond his years, became the catalyst for healing the fractured family bonds. One rainy afternoon, he asked Claire to push his wheelchair into Alexander's study, something he'd never done before. His father looked up from his security monitors, startled by the intrusion. "Mum's diary," Emil announced without preamble. "The one in your desk. We need to read it together." His small hands gripped the wheelchair arms tightly. All of us, including Gabriel. Alexander's immediate refusal died on his lips as he saw the determination in his son's eyes, Sarah's eyes. Claire stood quietly behind the wheelchair, her presence both supportive and uncertain. "Emil, some things aren't." Mum knew, Emil interrupted. "About Marina, about Claire, about everything. That's why she had the accident, isn't it?" The silence that followed was deafening. Alexander's hand moved unconsciously to his desk drawer, where Sarah's leather-bound diary lay hidden. Claire's breath caught audibly. "Please, Dad," Emil whispered. "I'm tired of pretending I don't understand." That evening, Gabriel received an unexpected text from Emil. "Come tonight. Back garden. Bring your phone." Despite Marina's strict instructions to avoid unauthorized contact, Gabriel found himself scaling the mansion's wall at midnight. He found them in the garden gazebo, Emil in his wheelchair, Claire perched tentatively on a bench, Alexander standing guard with the diary in his hands. The security cameras had been turned off, creating a small bubble of privacy in their surveilled world. "I know you're collecting evidence," Emil said to Gabriel, surprising everyone. "I've seen you recording Marina, just like I've seen Claire checking my medicine and Dad watching everyone through his cameras." Gabriel's carefully maintained facade cracked. "How did you?" "I see everything," Emil replied simply. "People forget I'm here sometimes. They talk. They act differently when they think no one's watching." Alexander opened Sarah's diary with trembling hands. The last entry he began reading was the night before the accident. Sarah's words flowed into the night air, revealing a truth they'd all sensed but never fully understood. She had discovered Marina's role in her daughter's death, had found proof of the medication tampering. More importantly, she had begun investigating Claire's case, believing her to be wrongly accused. "I have to make this right," Sarah had written. "For that young nurse who lost everything. For Marina's daughter who didn't have to die. For the truth that's been buried too long." Claire's quiet sobs broke the silence that followed. Gabriel, unable to maintain his distance any longer, crossed the gazebo and knelt before his sister. "I never believed her lies," he confessed, pulling out his phone. "Everything she said about you, I recorded it all. I've been gathering evidence since the day she found me." Claire stared at her brother, years of pain and longing crystallizing into this moment. "But why didn't you tell me?" "Because Marina has people watching you," Emil answered for him. "Just like she had people watching Mom." Alexander sat heavily on the bench, the weight of his failures pressing down on him. "I've been so blind," he whispered, "hiding behind cameras and security systems when the truth was right in front of me." Emil reached for his father's hand. Mom used to say that love sees clearer than cameras. In that moment, their broken pieces began fitting together. Gabriel shared his recordings, months of Marina's unguarded confessions, schemes, and threats. Claire revealed her discoveries about Emil's tampered medications. Alexander admitted to his growing suspicions about Sarah's accident. But it was Emil who provided the final piece. From his wheelchair cushion, he pulled out his own diary, pages of careful observations, conversations overheard, patterns noticed. A child's record of truth that couldn't be dismissed or manipulated. "We're stronger together," Emil declared, his voice carrying echoes of Sarah's determination. "That's what Marina's afraid of. US becoming a real family." Looking at them in the moonlight, Claire wiping away tears, Gabriel protectively close to his sister, Emil's fierce determination, Alexander's dawning understanding, they realized Emil was right. Their bonds, forged through suffering and suspicion, had become unbreakable. Alexander made a decision. "Tomorrow," he announced, "we end this. All of us together." Claire hesitated. "Marina still has power. The hospital board." "Can't ignore evidence from 4 different sources," Gabriel finished, holding up his phone. "Especially when one of them is a child who's been documenting his own poisoning." They spent hours planning, sharing information, filling in gaps in each other's knowledge. By dawn, they had formed not just a strategy, but a family united in purpose. As they wheeled Emil back to his room, he caught Claire's hand. "Stay," he whispered. "Both of you," he looked at Gabriel. "Like when you used to read stories to each other." That's how Marina found them the next morning, Claire and Gabriel asleep on either side of Emil's bed, while Alexander dozed in the nearby chair. Her fury at seeing her carefully separated pawns united would be the first crack in her composure. What she didn't realize was that this tableau of family unity wasn't just a defeat of her manipulations, it was the birth of something stronger than her schemes, something that would ultimately lead to her downfall. With their newfound unity, the family began meticulously assembling their case against Marina. Each member played a crucial role in gathering and connecting evidence, turning the mansion into a covert operations center. Emil, despite his physical limitations, proved to be their most valuable intelligence gatherer. His wheelchair position in various rooms made him practically invisible to others, allowing him to observe unnoticed. He kept his iPad recording during Marina's medical consultations, capturing her subtle additions to his drinks and her whispered phone conversations. "She doesn't even look at me when she does it anymore," Emil told them during one of their secret meetings in his room. "Yesterday she added something to my juice while talking to Dr. Reynolds about increasing my hospital stays." Gabriel organized their evidence into 3 distinct categories: historical, current, and predictive. His recordings of Marina included damning admissions about Sarah's accident, Claire's framing, and future plans. Most crucially, he had captured her unguarded moment during the gala. "Got her talking about Mom's death," Gabriel reported, playing a recording where Marina, slightly drunk on champagne, had boasted about taking care of problems at the hospital. "She thinks I'm still on her side, still angry at Claire. She's getting careless." Claire focused on the medical evidence, meticulously documenting Emil's symptoms and their correlation with Marina's visits. Her background as a nurse proved invaluable as she built a timeline connecting Marina's daughter's death, her own disgrace, and Emil's mysterious illness. "The pattern is clear," she explained, spreading her notes across Emil's desk. "The same medications that were found in Marina's daughter's system are showing up in Emil's blood work. she's been recreating the original crime, but slowly this time to avoid suspicion. Alexander contributed his years of security footage, now viewed through new eyes. What had once seemed like innocent interactions became sinister when examined closely. He discovered footage of Marina in Sarah's study the night before the accident, removing papers from a locked drawer. She must have found Sarah's evidence that night, Alexander realized. That's why the accident happened so suddenly. But their most powerful evidence came from an unexpected source. Sophia, the head housekeeper, approached them one evening with a small box. "Mrs. Sarah gave this to me the day she died," she revealed, her hands trembling. "Said if anything happened to her, I should keep it safe until it was needed." Inside were documents Sarah had gathered, hospital records showing Marina's tampering, witness statements she'd collected about her daughter's death, and most importantly, a detailed letter explaining everything she'd discovered. "My dear Alexander," Sarah's letter began, "if you're reading this, something has happened to me. Marina isn't who we thought she was. She's been using our hospital to cover up her crimes." The letter went on to detail how Sarah had discovered Marina's pattern of medication tampering, her manipulation of hospital records, and her threats against those who discovered the truth. Claire's case had been mentioned specifically. The young nurse, Claire Collins, was innocent, Sarah had written. Marina framed her to prevent her from exposing the truth about her daughter's death. "We must make this right." Armed with this wealth of evidence, they began preparing their counterattack. Emil suggested using his iPad to live stream Marina's medical treatments, ensuring multiple witnesses could testify to her actions. Gabriel continued playing his role as Marina's confidant, encouraging her to reveal more incriminating details. Claire cross-referenced Sarah's documents with hospital records she'd secretly obtained through Dr. Reynolds's guilty conscience. The doctor, it turned out, had been keeping his own records of Marina's suspicious activities. "He's willing to testify," Claire announced one night. "He's been wanting to come clean for years, but was afraid of Marina's influence." Alexander focused on building legal support, quietly contacting trusted attorneys and investigators who could move quickly when the time came. He also began transferring hospital board control away from Marina's allies, preparing for the inevitable power struggle. The evidence culminated in a master document they called the Marina File, containing Sarah's letter and supporting documents. Emil's recorded footage of medication tampering. Gabriel's audio recordings of Marina's confessions. Claire's medical analysis and timeline. Alexander's security footage. Dr. Reynolds' sworn statement. Hospital records showing patterns of manipulation. Financial records revealing Marina's corrupt dealings. Witness statements from staff members. "It's overwhelming," Alexander said, reviewing their collection. "No one could dismiss this much proof." But Emil, wise beyond his years, added a crucial observation: "We need to show who Marina really is, not just what she did. People need to understand why." This led them to their final piece of evidence, Marina's own daughter's medical records, which showed that the child's death had been preventable if Marina hadn't been medicating her secretly for years to maintain control. "She's been recreating her own crime," Claire realized, punishing herself through Emil while trying to maintain control over everything. The evidence was ready, but timing would be crucial. They knew Marina was planning something big. Her increasingly frequent phone calls and nervous energy suggested she was preparing her own endgame. "We have to strike first," Gabriel insisted, "before she realizes we're all working together." As they finalized their preparations, Emil made one last contribution to their evidence collection. He had been recording his own video diary, speaking directly to the camera about his experiences. "I'm not just a sick kid," his clear voice stated in the final entry. "I'm proof of what Marina did, and I want to tell my story." Their evidence was assembled. Their plan was set. Now they just had to wait for the right moment to bring everything into the light. The morning Marina launched her legal attack, storm clouds gathered over the Gutierrez mansion. Her timing was calculated for maximum impact. She filed the lawsuit just as the hospital board convened for their annual meeting, ensuring maximum publicity and professional damage. But the legal documents arrived via courier during breakfast. Alexander sat at the head of the table, Emil to his right, Claire helping him with his food, and Gabriel, who had officially moved in the previous week, quietly observing. Marina's entrance was theatrical, her Louboutin heels clicking against marble as she strode in, flanked by two attorneys. "I hate to do this," she announced, her voice dripping with false regret, "but I have a duty to protect this family." She placed the documents before Alexander with flourish. "Claire Collins is hereby charged with medical malpractice, child endangerment, and attempted manipulation of a minor for financial gain." The accusations were devastating in their scope. Marina had woven together Claire's past disgrace, her current position, and Gabriel's supposed testimony into a damning narrative. The lawsuit claimed Claire had deliberately ingratiated herself with the family, using Emil's vulnerability to position herself for financial exploitation. "We have evidence," Marina's lead attorney stated, "that Ms. Collins has been tampering with Emil's medication, deliberately prolonging his illness to maintain her position in the household." But the irony of this accusation was not lost on any of them. Emil's hand found Claire's under the table, squeezing it reassuringly. Marina had orchestrated her attack perfectly. News vans already gathered outside the mansion gates, their satellite dishes pointed like weapons. Hospital board members were being contacted for statements. Social services had been notified about Gabriel's situation. Furthermore, Marina continued, pulling out another document. "We're seeking emergency custody of Gabriel Collins, given his sister's proven history of neglect and current criminal allegations." Gabriel's face went pale, but he maintained his composure, his phone recording every word in his pocket. They had anticipated this move, but the reality was still shocking. Alexander stood slowly, his expression unreadable. "You've been planning this for a while, haven't you, Marina?" "Only trying to protect what matters," she replied smoothly. "The hospital's reputation, Emil's health, the family's legacy, everything you've worked for, Alexander." Claire remained silent, her training as a nurse evident in her steady hands as she continued helping Emil with his breakfast. Only those who knew her well could see the slight tremor in her jaw, the way her shoulders squared against the assault. The attorneys laid out their demands. Claire was to leave the premises immediately. Gabriel would be placed in Marina's custody pending investigation. The hospital board would review all of Emil's medical records. And Alexander would need to make a public statement supporting the lawsuit. "If you fight this," Marina warned, "everything comes out. Every decision you've made about Claire, every risk you've taken with Emil's care. Your judgment will be questioned. The board might even suggest removing Emil from your custody." It was a masterful power play. Marina had leveraged every vulnerability, every past mistake, every potential scandal into a weapon. She had timed her attack to coincide with the board meeting, ensuring maximum professional damage. She had even arranged for sympathetic news coverage, with reporters already preparing stories about the wealthy widower deceived by a manipulative nurse. But Marina had overlooked one crucial detail. The family she thought she was destroying had already been forged into something stronger through their shared secrets and midnight planning sessions. Alexander picked up the legal documents, appearing to study them carefully. "You know, Marina, Sarah always said you were brilliant at strategy. She admired that about you, right up until the night she discovered the truth." Marina's composed facade cracked slightly. "I don't know what your Dad," Emil interrupted, his clear voice carrying across the tension. "Can I show them my video now?" Marina's eyes snapped to the iPad on Emil's lap. "Video? The ones of you adding things to my juice," Emil explained innocently. "And the recordings of what you said about Mom's accident. I've been keeping them all." The blood drained from Marina's face, as she realized her careful plans were built on a fatal assumption that she was the only one gathering evidence. Gabriel stood next, holding up his phone. "I have some interesting recordings too. Would you like to hear yourself discussing how you framed my sister? Or maybe your plans for another convenient accident?" "You're bluffing," Marina's attorney interjected, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. Claire finally spoke, her voice steady. "Sarah kept evidence too, didn't she, Marina?" "Evidence about your daughter. That's why she had her accident, because she was going to expose everything." Marina's carefully constructed attack was unraveling, but like a cornered animal, she lashed out with her final weapon. "You have no proof," she snarled. "It's your word against mine, and I have the hospital board, the legal system, and years of documented history on my side." Alexander smiled for the first time that morning. "Actually," he said, pressing a button on his phone, "we have exactly 847 hours of security footage, Sarah's hidden documents, Emil's medical records showing systematic tampering, Gabriel's recordings, and Dr. Reynolds' sworn statement about your role in covering up your daughter's death." The attorneys exchanged alarmed glances. Outside, the storm broke, rain lashing against windows that had witnessed so many secrets. Inside, Marina's lawsuit, her final attempt to maintain control, was transforming from a weapon into a vulnerability. "Should we show them the Marina file now?" Emil asked innocently, "or save it for court?" The courthouse buzzed with tension on the day of the hearing. Media crews crowded the steps, their cameras trained on the entrance. Marina's lawsuit had transformed into something much bigger, a case that threatened to expose years of corruption at the city's most prestigious hospital. Emil insisted on testifying first, defying Marina's attempts to portray him as a manipulated invalid. He wheeled himself to the witness stand, refusing assistance, his small frame carrying a dignity that silenced the courtroom. "Marina has been making me sick," he stated clearly, his voice carrying to every corner. "I have videos of her adding things to my drinks, the same things she used on her daughter, and the same things she tried to blame Claire for." The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, leaned forward. "Young man, these are serious accusations. Do you understand what you're saying?" Emil nodded, then did something unexpected. He pushed himself to stand, gripping the witness box for support. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. "The doctor said I couldn't walk because of my condition," he explained, his legs trembling but holding. "But since Claire started checking my medicine and stopping Marina's special vitamins, I'm getting stronger." Marina's face contorted with rage, but before she could object, Emil's iPad footage began playing on the courtroom screens. The evidence was damning clear shots of Marina adding substances to his drinks, whispered phone calls about maintaining his dependence, conversations with Dr. Reynolds about increasing medications. Dr. Reynolds himself testified next, his professional demeanor crumbling as he confessed his role in the cover-up. "Marina had evidence of my own misconduct," he admitted. "She used it to force my cooperation, first with her daughter, then with Claire Collins' case, and finally with Emil." Gabriel's testimony proved even more devastating. He played recording after recording of Marina's unguarded moments, her boasts about framing Claire, her satisfaction at separating the siblings, her casual references to Sarah's accident. "She thought I was on her side," Gabriel explained, looking directly at his sister. "She never realized I was gathering evidence to clear Claire's name." But the courtroom's most dramatic moment came when Alexander presented Sarah's hidden evidence. Marina's composed facade shattered as Sarah's letter was read aloud, detailed accusations written by a woman who knew she might not live to speak them. "I discovered that Marina has been systematically tampering with patient medications," Sarah's words echoed through the silent courtroom. "She began with her own daughter, creating symptoms to maintain control. When Claire Collins discovered the pattern, Marina orchestrated her disgrace. I fear I may be next, but this truth must be told." Marina lunged to her feet. "She's lying." She was confused, unstable. Like your daughter Claire's quiet question cut through Marina's protests. The daughter you kept sick to maintain control, just like you've been doing to Emil. The judge called for order as Marina's carefully constructed world began crumbling. Her own attorneys looked increasingly uncomfortable as evidence mounted financial records showing bribes, hospital documents revealing patterns of tampering, security footage from the night of Sarah's accident. Then came Claire's testimony. She took the stand not as a defendant, but as a key witness to years of manipulation and corruption. Her nursing expertise allowed her to explain the medical evidence in clear, damning terms. The pattern was identical, she explained, pointing to comparison charts. The same medications Marina used on her daughter appeared in Emil's blood work. The same symptoms, the same decline, the same dependency. Marina's breaking point came during cross-examination. Her own attorney, sensing the case collapsing, asked about her daughter's death. Something in Marina snapped. "I had to keep her close," she screamed, years of guilt and justification pouring out. She was going to leave me, just like everyone leaves. The medications kept her needing me. And it would have worked with Emil too, if Claire hadn't ruined everything again. The courtroom fell silent. Marina's confession hung in the air, damning and irretrievable. Her attorney sat stunned as their client continued her tirade, revealing more than any evidence could have proven. Sarah found out. She was going to expose everything. I couldn't let her destroy what I'd built. I couldn't let her take another child away from me. The judge's gavel crack echoed like a gunshot. "Remove the defendant," she ordered. Marina was led away, still shouting accusations and justifications, her perfectly maintained facade finally shattered completely. The judge's ruling was comprehensive. All charges against Claire were dismissed. Marina faced multiple criminal charges, including attempted murder, medical tampering, and conspiracy. The hospital board would undergo a complete investigation. But it was her final words that brought healing to the fractured family. "Ms. Collins, this court owes you an apology. Your medical license is hereby reinstated, with all records of previous accusations expunged. Mr. Gutierrez, your son is fortunate to have found someone willing to fight so hard to protect him. And young Mr. Collins," she addressed Gabriel, "your courage in gathering evidence at great personal risk speaks to exceptional character." As they left the courthouse, reporters clamoring for statements, Emil reached for both Claire and Gabriel's hands. Alexander walked beside them, his arm protectively around Claire's shoulders. They emerged into the sunlight not as victors over Marina, but as a family forged in adversity. But even as they celebrated their victory, none of them realized that Marina had one final, desperate card to play, one that would test their newly formed bonds to their absolute limit. The revelation came 3 days after the trial, delivered in a plain white envelope to the mansion's door. Inside was a single photograph and a handwritten note from Marina, sent from her holding cell. The image showed a teenage girl around 15 with hauntingly familiar features. "Meet Alice," Marina's note read. "My daughter. The one they told me died. The one Claire actually saved that night." The family gathered in Alexander's study, the photograph lying between them on his desk like a live grenade. Claire's hands trembled as she studied the girl's face, the same face she tried to save 5 years ago. "She's alive," Gabriel whispered, watching his sister's reaction. "Impossible," Alexander muttered, but he was already accessing hospital records on his computer. The death certificate was falsified. Came a new voice. They turned to find Dr. Reynolds in the doorway, his face ashen. Marina didn't know. None of us knew. The hospital board. They made a decision that night. The truth spilled out in bitter fragments. The night of the incident, when Claire had actually managed to stabilize Marina's daughter, the board had seen an opportunity. They had declared the girl dead officially, but secretly transferred her to a private facility under a different name. It was meant to protect the hospital from Marina's increasingly erratic behavior with medications. They gave her a new identity, Dr. Reynolds explained, placed her with a family across the country. Marina's grief made her more controllable, more useful to them, and Claire's disgrace covered everything up perfectly. Emil, who had been quietly processing everything, suddenly spoke up. That's why Mum was so upset that night. She found out about Alice. Claire sank into a chair, years of guilt and pain crashing over her. I didn't fail to save her. She lived. She's been alive all this time. Alexander's security team quickly confirmed the truth. Alice, now living under the name Emma Parker, was indeed thriving with her adoptive family in Seattle. She had no memory of her early years, the doctors having attributed the gap to trauma. Marina must have discovered this recently, Alexander reasoned. That's why she escalated her plans with Emil. She was recreating what she thought had happened to Alice. But Gabriel saw something deeper in the revelation. This changes everything, he said quietly. Marina's not just a villain. She's a victim too. They stole her daughter, used her grief as a weapon, and let an innocent woman take the blame. The truth had layers they were only beginning to understand. The hospital board's corruption went far beyond Marina's actions. They had orchestrated an elaborate deception that destroyed multiple lives, Marina's descent into obsessive control, Claire's unjust disgrace, Sarah's death for discovering the truth. Emil wheeled himself to Claire's side. You have to tell her, he said with a child's simple clarity. Marina needs to know her daughter is alive. The decision wasn't simple. Marina had done terrible things, caused immeasurable harm. But could they withhold such a truth, knowing the pain that had driven her actions? There's more, Dr. Reynolds added hesitantly. Alice, Emma, she's sick. The years of medication Marina gave her caused long-term complications. She needs specialized treatment, but her adoptive family doesn't know her medical history. Claire stood abruptly. I need to see Marina. Claire, no, Alexander protested. After everything she's done. She needs to know, Claire interrupted. And she needs to help save her daughter. Again. The prison meeting was arranged quickly, given the medical urgency. Claire faced Marina across a steel table, the photograph between them. Marina looked broken, her perfectly maintained appearance reduced to prison grey, her eyes hollow with defeat. She's alive, Claire said simply, and she needs her mother's help. Marina's transformation was immediate and heartbreaking. She crumpled, years of hatred and vengeance dissolving into raw grief and hope. They told me she died. They said you killed her. They lied to both of us, Claire replied softly. And now we have to save her. Together. The hidden truth had an unexpected effect. Marina's protective instincts, so long twisted into something dark, found their true purpose again. She provided detailed records of Alice's early medical history, crucial information for treating her current condition. But the most profound revelation came from Emil. Reading his mother's diary again, he found a final entry they'd overlooked. Marina's greatest tragedy isn't what she's done, but what was done to her. The same board members who took her daughter are the ones who advised Alexander to increase my medication before the accident. They've been playing God with people's lives, using the hospital to hide their crimes. The truth had come full circle. Sarah's death, Claire's disgrace, Marina's descent into madness, all were pieces of a larger conspiracy that had nearly destroyed them all. As they prepared to expose the hospital board's decades of deception, they realized that healing wouldn't come from justice alone. It would come from understanding the complex web of pain, lies and loss that had brought them to this point. Sometimes, Emil observed, watching Claire comfort Marina through her tears, the real villain isn't the person you're fighting. It's the lie they believed that made them fight you. The hidden truths had transformed their story from a simple tale of good versus evil into something far more complex, a narrative of human pain, institutional corruption, and the possibility of redemption even for those who seem beyond saving. If this emotional journey moved you, there are many more powerful stories waiting to be discovered. Join our storytelling community by hitting subscribe now. Every week we bring you tales of redemption, forgiveness, and the profound complexity of human nature. Don't forget to enable notifications for more heart-touching content. Just when it seemed resolution was within reach, tragedy struck with devastating precision. The hospital board, facing exposure of their decades-long deception, launched a counterattack that threatened to destroy everything the family had built. It began with a leaked video, carefully edited to show Claire appearing to tamper with Emil's medication. The footage, taken from Alexander's own security system, had been manipulated to remove Marina's presence and make Claire's caring actions look sinister. Breaking news: Gutierrez family nurse caught poisoning child, the headline screamed. Social media exploded with the edited clip, each share driving another nail into Claire's newly restored reputation. "We trusted you," Gabriel shouted, storming into Claire's room, waving his phone with the viral video. His performance was perfect, exactly what the watching board members expected from a betrayed brother. "Everything Marina said was true. You're just like her." Claire, understanding the act, but wounded by the echoes of their real past separation, could barely meet his eyes. "Gabriel, please." "Stay away from me," he stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. Only Emil, watching through his partially open door, saw Gabriel slide down the hallway wall afterward, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The board's attack was comprehensive. They released evidence suggesting Claire had manipulated the earlier trial, that her relationship with Alexander was inappropriate, that Emil's improving health was a carefully orchestrated deception to gain control of the Gutierrez fortune. Alexander found himself trapped. As hospital board chairman, he faced mounting pressure to distance himself from Claire. His fellow board members, all implicated in the Alice cover-up, made their threat clear: support Claire and watch his entire medical empire crumble. "Think of Emil," they urged during an emergency board meeting. "Think of your son's future, all the children your hospitals help. Is one nurse worth destroying everything?" Emil, forced to undergo new medical evaluations, struggled with the constant questioning. "Did Miss Collins ever hurt you?" they asked repeatedly. "Did she make you say things about Marina?" His silent refusal to respond was interpreted as trauma. Claire watched her newly rebuilt world crumbling. Hospital staff who had celebrated her vindication now avoided eye contact. Parents withdrew their children from her care. Her reinstated medical license hung by a thread as new investigations were launched. The personal costs mounted daily. Gabriel had to maintain his act of betrayal, each public rejection of his sister cutting deeper than the last. Emil's health began deteriorating again, the stress of maintaining their facade taking its toll on his fragile system. Alexander faced the cruelest choice: protect Claire and lose everything he'd built, or abandon her to save his hospitals. The weight of responsibility crushed him. Thousands of jobs, countless patients, his own son's future, all balanced against the truth and the woman he'd grown to love. Late one night he found Claire packing her bags. "Don't," he pleaded, knowing they might be watched. "I'm destroying your family," she whispered. Again, just like before with Alice. "This isn't the same." "Isn't it?" She gestured to the headlines screaming across his tablet. "Emil's getting worse. Gabriel has to pretend to hate me. Your whole life's work is at risk. Maybe Marina was right. I bring destruction wherever I go." Before Alexander could respond, Emil's monitors began blaring. They rushed to his room to find him struggling to breathe, the stress finally overwhelming his system. As medical teams swarmed in, Claire stood frozen in the doorway, watching her worst fears play out. "Get her out of here," Gabriel shouted, maintaining their deception even in crisis. "Haven't you hurt us enough?" Claire backed away, her world tunneling down to Emil's pale face as he reached for her. But she couldn't go to him, couldn't comfort him, couldn't do anything but watch as everything she loved slipped away again. That night, she left a letter for Alexander. "I won't let them destroy everything you've built. Emil needs his father's hospitals more than he needs me. Gabriel needs a chance at a real life, not another scandal. Sometimes love means knowing when to walk away. Take care of our boys. Claire." By morning, she was gone. The board members congratulated themselves on a crisis averted. Marina, watching from her prison cell as the news reported Claire's disappearance, felt a hollow victory that tasted like ashes. What none of them realized was that this apparent defeat was exactly what the family had planned, the first move in a game of sacrifice that would expose the truth, no matter the personal cost. Marina's triumph seemed complete. From her prison cell, she watched events unfold exactly as the hospital board had promised when they approached her with their deal provide evidence against Claire, and she would be moved to a minimum security psychiatric facility with potential visitation rights to Alice. The media circus played perfectly into their hands, convicted felon Marina Villarreal vindicated headlines declared. Hospital whistleblower exposed family conspiracy, her carefully crafted interview from prison, tears streaming as she described being framed by Claire and the Gutierrez family, went viral. "I only wanted to protect Emil," she sobbed to cameras. "I saw the same patterns I failed to stop with my own daughter. History was repeating itself, but no one would listen." The board's strategy was masterful. They positioned Marina as a tragic figure, a mother who lost everything trying to expose the truth. Her previous confession during the trial was attributed to emotional distress and coercion. Expert witnesses suddenly emerged, questioning the validity of the evidence that had convicted her. Alexander found himself besieged on all sides. Major donors threatened to withdraw funding from his hospitals. Medical partnerships began dissolving. The board presented him with an impossible choice: sign a statement supporting Marina's version of events, or watch his life's work crumble. Emil's deteriorating condition added crushing pressure. His doctors, carefully chosen by the board, suggested specialized treatment only available at facilities under board control. They hinted that Child Protective Services might need to evaluate Alexander's fitness as a parent if he refused their recommended care. "Just sign it, Dad," Emil whispered from his hospital bed, his voice weak but his eyes conveying deeper meaning. "Sometimes you have to lose to win." Gabriel maintained his public performance of betrayed brother perfectly. He gave tearful interviews about Claire's manipulation, each word carefully crafted to seem damning while actually containing hidden meanings they would use later. "She changed everything when she came into our lives," he told reporters, his voice breaking. "Nothing was the same after she arrived. She completely transformed our family." True statements that could be interpreted two ways. The mansion felt hollow without Claire. Her absence left a physical ache, made worse by the necessity of their plan. Each family member played their part in appearing broken and defeated, while Marina's star rose. The board arranged for Marina's transfer to an exclusive private mental health facility. Her public redemption story garnered sympathy and support. She made tearful apologies for her emotional outburst during the trial, claiming stress and manipulation had caused her to make false confessions. "I see now that I needed help," she told a primetime interviewer. "My grief over losing Alice made me vulnerable to Claire's manipulation. She used my pain, just like she used Emil's condition and Alexander's loneliness." Social media erupted with Justice for Marina hashtags. Public opinion, so recently in Claire's favor, swung dramatically. The same people who had celebrated her vindication now condemned her, sharing old photos from her homeless days as proof of her unstable character. Even Sarah's diary evidence was questioned. Experts suggested the handwriting might have been forged, the dates manipulated. Marina's legal team filed appeals based on new evidence and procedural complaints. Alexander watched his security footage obsessively, not for surveillance now, but to catch glimpses of happier days, Claire reading to Emil, family dinners, moments of laughter that seemed forever lost. The cameras that had once represented his distrust now preserved memories of trust and love. Emil, still in the hospital, continued declining. His room, once brightened by Claire's presence, became a sterile medical space again. The paper cranes they'd made together gathered dust on the windowsill. But those who looked closely might have noticed him writing constantly in his journal, documenting everything with a child's detailed observation. The victory celebration at the hospital board reached its peak when Marina was officially released into psychiatric care. Board members congratulated themselves on containing the scandal and protecting their interests. Their decades of secrets seemed safe once again. But in their triumph, they missed crucial details: Emil's medical records being quietly copied by sympathetic nurses. Gabriel's continued recording of every conversation. Alexander's careful documentation of each board meeting. Encrypted emails between scattered allies building a stronger case. Most importantly, they never questioned why Claire's disappearance seemed too clean, too complete. They never wondered why Alexander's surrender came too easily, or why Emil's decline followed too perfect a pattern. Marina's victory party at the private facility was interrupted by a single text message from an unknown number. A mother deserves to know her daughter's true condition. Meet tomorrow, 3 p.m. Come alone. The message included a recent photo of Alice. The breaking point arrived with devastating precision at Marina's psychiatric facility. Claire, having orchestrated her own disappearance, appeared in Marina's private room like a ghost. Her presence sent Marina stumbling backward, knocking over her carefully arranged medications. Alice is dying, Claire announced without preamble. The drugs you gave her as a child have caused organ failure. She needs a genetic match for transplant, and you're her only hope. Marina's redemption facade cracked instantly. You're lying. The board said she's fine. The board lied to you, just like they lied to everyone else. Claire placed medical records on Marina's desk. They're still lying. They don't care if Alice lives or dies, as long as their secrets stay buried. The truth hit Marina like physical blows. Her daughter was alive but suffering. The board had used her grief, her guilt, her desperate need for control, all to protect themselves. Her revenge against Claire had been built on a foundation of manipulation. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Emil's condition reached a critical stage. His deterioration, carefully managed to appear natural, suddenly accelerated beyond their planned deception. The stress of maintaining their facade had taken a genuine toll on his fragile system. Something's wrong, he whispered to Gabriel, his small hand trembling. Really wrong this time, the monitors confirmed his racing heart, his struggling breath no longer an act. Gabriel broke character immediately, his performed hatred for Claire forgotten as he called Alexander in panic. Their carefully orchestrated plan began unraveling as Emil's pretended illness transformed into a real crisis. Alexander rushed to the hospital, arriving to find board members already there, using Emil's condition to pressure him further. Sign full control over to us, they demanded. Or we'll ensure he only receives treatment at board-approved facilities. In Marina's room, the confrontation reached its climax. Help me save your daughter, Claire pleaded. Help me expose the board before they destroy another family. Marina's response was unexpected. She began laughing, a hollow, broken sound. Save her? I'm the one who poisoned her. I'm the one who made her sick, just like Emil. Just like all of them, her composure shattered completely. I thought if I could control their health, they'd never leave me. But everyone leaves. Everyone always leaves. The security cameras captured her breakdown in full detail, another piece of evidence in Gabriel's growing collection. But this time, the footage showed something else: Claire reaching out to comfort the woman who had destroyed her life. At the hospital, Emil's crisis brought their deception to a breaking point. His genuine distress called for immediate intervention, but the board-appointed doctors hesitated, watching their superiors for permission before acting. Help him, Gabriel shouted, his carefully maintained act forgotten in real fear for Emil. What are you waiting for? Alexander faced his moment of truth. His son needed immediate care, but the board still held power over the hospital. Every second of hesitation cost Emil dearly. But then Marina made the decision for all of them. Having heard about Emil's crisis, she stormed into the hospital with Claire, her psychiatric release forgotten in the face of a child in danger. The sight of them together, the supposed victim and villain united, caused chaos in the hospital corridors. "I confess," Marina announced to the gathering crowd, her voice carrying over the medical alarms, "to everything. The board's corruption, Alice's fake death, Sarah's murder, Emil's poisoning. I'll sign whatever you need. Just save him, please." Claire rushed to Emil's side, her medical training taking over despite her fugitive status. "He needs specific medications to counter what's been in his system," she called out. "The same protocol we used for Alice." The board members tried to intervene, but hospital staff, having witnessed too much, finally broke ranks. Dr. Reynolds appeared with the required medications. Nurses moved to assist Claire without waiting for board approval. Gabriel recorded everything, his phone capturing the board's attempts to stop treatment, Marina's public confession, the staff's rebellion. But it was Emil's voice, weak but clear, that delivered the final blow. Mom knew he managed between breaths. She wrote it all down. Every meeting, every decision, every child they hurt. His small hand gripped Claire's as the new medications began to work. That's why they killed her. The breaking point became a shattering one. Marina's confession opened a flood of truth that couldn't be contained. Staff members stepped forward with their own stories. Former patients' families began calling. The board's decades of corruption began crumbling in real time. But amidst the chaos, the true cost became clear. Emil's condition, though stabilizing, had suffered real damage. Marina's breakdown was genuine and complete, and the family's carefully planned exposure of the truth had nearly cost them everything they were fighting to protect. The truth emerged like a tsunami, starting with a single document uploaded simultaneously to major news outlets worldwide. Emil's complete medical diary, detailing years of subtle poisoning and manipulation, appeared first. His childish handwriting carried devastating credibility as he described Marina adding substances to his drinks, board members pressuring his father, and overheard conversations about maintaining control. Within hours, Gabriel's massive archive of recordings began streaming on a dedicated website. Hundreds of audio files, meticulously catalogued and time-stamped, revealed the board's conspiracy in their own words. "The Collins girl was convenient," one board member had said. "Marina's grief made her the perfect weapon." Sarah Gutierrez became dangerous, another recording played. She was asking too many questions about Alice. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. The hospital's own security system, programmed by Alexander to create redundant backups, had been silently documenting years of board meetings. Every decision, every cover-up, every calculated move was preserved in high-definition video. "Delete the real death certificates," a board chairman ordered in one clip. "Alice Villarreal officially died 5 years ago." That story stays buried. The avalanche of evidence proved overwhelming. Sarah's complete diary, revealing the board's systematic abuse of power. Financial records showing decades of falsified documents. Medical records of other children used as pawns. Email threads discussing problem staff members. Security footage of Marina being manipulated by board members. Witness statements from staff who'd been silenced. Dr. Reynolds, finally free from board pressure, released his own evidence cache. Years of altered medical records, forced signatures, and threatened families painted a picture of institutional corruption that spanned generations. They used children's health as leverage, he testified to state investigators. "Sick kids make desperate parents. Desperate parents don't ask questions." Emil's recordings proved especially powerful. His iPad had captured dozens of interactions where board members openly discussed using his condition to control Alexander. "Your father's hospitals help thousands," they'd told him. "Sometimes one child's comfort must be sacrificed for the greater good." The evidence implicated not just the board, but revealed a network of compromised doctors, falsified research, and buried incidents. Marina's daughter Alice wasn't the only child who'd been separated from problematic parents. Sarah wasn't the only whistleblower who'd met with an accident. Claire's original case files, thought destroyed, emerged from multiple backup sources. They showed clear evidence of tampering, with Marina's signature on falsified documents and board members' fingerprints all over the cover-up. Most devastatingly, Sarah's final video message, hidden in the mansion's security archives, came to light. Recorded the night before her death, it laid out the entire conspiracy. If you're seeing this, Sarah's image spoke. Something has happened to me. The board's corruption goes deeper than anyone suspects. They've been using Marina's psychiatric instability to cover their tracks. The Collins case was just the beginning. I've gathered evidence of at least 7 other families they've destroyed. Alexander, Emil. If I don't make it home tomorrow, look in the garden roses. Everything you need is there. The garden roses, as it turned out, contained a weatherproof case with copies of every document, recording, and piece of evidence the family had used to build their case. Sarah had created the ultimate dead man's switch. Marina, watching the evidence unfold from her psychiatric facility, provided the final confirmation. Her detailed confession, recorded by Claire during their confrontation, corroborated every piece of evidence while adding crucial context about the board's manipulation of her mental state. But they used my daughter's illness, she explained in the recording. Then they used her death, her fake death. They turned my grief into a weapon. When Sarah discovered Alice was alive, they didn't just silence her. They made me complicit in her death. The evidence was irrefutable, comprehensive, and devastating. Multiple sources, independent verification, and years of documentation left no room for denial. The board's attempts to discredit the evidence only led to more revelations as whistleblowers, emboldened by the initial releases, came forward in waves. But perhaps the most powerful evidence was Emil's recovery once the board's influence was removed. His medical readings, carefully documented by Claire, showed immediate improvement once Marina's secret additions to his medication stopped. As the evidence mounted, the family's apparent defeat transformed into an overwhelming victory. Their calculated risk appearing to break apart while actually gathering their final proof had paid off beyond their expectations. The final showdown took place in the hospital's main conference room, where the board had gathered for emergency damage control. They hadn't expected their victims to confront them directly, and certainly not all at once. The doors burst open to reveal Alexander leading an unexpected coalition, Claire pushing Emil's wheelchair, Gabriel with his phone live-streaming, Marina in custody but wearing a wire, and behind them a phalanx of law enforcement officers and state medical investigators. Gentleman Alexander announced, his voice carrying the weight of years of suppressed anger, "I believe we're overdue for a board meeting." The board chairman, Richard Maxwell, maintained his composure. "Alexander, this is a private meeting." "Nothing about this hospital has been private," Emil interrupted, his clear voice cutting through the tension. He wheeled himself forward, Sarah's diary in his lap. "Mom knew everything, and now everyone else does too." The live stream counter on Gabriel's phone ticked upward. 100,000 viewers, 250,000, 500,000. The world was watching. "You've seen the evidence," Claire stated, standing protectively behind Emil. "But there's one piece you haven't seen yet." She nodded to Marina, who stepped forward, trembling but determined. "Alice is here," Marina announced. The board members froze. "My daughter, the one you told me was dead, the one you used to control me, she's in this building right now." On cue, a young woman entered the room. Alice, now 15, bore the hallmark signs of years of medication abuse, but her eyes held the same fierce determination that had once characterized her mother. The board members' faces went ash white. "Do you know what it's like," Alice asked quietly, "to discover your entire life is built on lies? that the mother you were told abandoned you was actually fighting to save you. But Maxwell attempted to regain control. This is all very dramatic, but what Gabriel's voice dripped with contempt as he angled his phone camera. You'll arrange another accident? Frame another innocent person? How many Sarah Gutierrez's have you silenced? The evidence played on screens around the room: Sarah's final video, Emil's medical logs, Marina's confession, years of security footage. Each board member saw their own crimes reflected back at them in high definition. You used my grief, Marina spoke, her voice breaking. You used my illness. You made me hurt children, Emil, others all, because I thought I'd failed to save my own daughter. We did what was necessary, Maxwell snapped, finally losing his composure. The hospital's reputation. The hospital's reputation, Alexander cut in. You murdered my wife because she discovered your crimes. You poisoned my son to control me. You destroyed Claire's life to cover your tracks. And you did it all to protect your reputation. The law enforcement officers moved forward, but Maxwell had one last card to play. He pulled out his phone, finger hovering over a button. One call. He threatened, and every major news outlet gets proof of financial irregularities in all your hospitals, Alexander. You'll lose everything. Every facility will close. Thousands will lose their jobs, their healthcare. Do it, Emil challenged, his voice strong despite his wheelchair. Show them how you blackmail people. The whole world is watching. Maxwell's finger trembled over his phone. The live stream counter passed 1 million viewers. It's over, Claire said softly. The truth doesn't need manipulation or threats. It just needs to be spoken. Alice walked to her mother's side, taking her hand. Marina, seeing her daughter's forgiveness, finally broke down completely. I confess, she sobbed. To everything. Every document I falsified, every person I helped them silence. Sarah Gutierrez came to me the night she died, offering to help expose everything. I told the board, I'm the reason she never made it home. The confession, broadcast live to millions, broke the last thread of the board's control. As officers moved in with arrest warrants, Maxwell made a desperate lunge toward Emil, a final attempt to grab a hostage. But Claire was faster, stepping between them with the same protective instinct that had once driven her to shield a lost child in the rain. No more children, she declared firmly. No more victims. The arrests were swift and comprehensive, but it was the image of the family standing united, Alexander and Claire flanking Emil's wheelchair, Gabriel documenting everything, Marina and Alice reconnecting through their tears that would appear on front pages worldwide. As the board members were led away in handcuffs, Emil reached for the last paper crane on his wheelchair tray. He released it into the air, watching it drift in the conference room's air conditioning current. Mom used to say, he announced to the still streaming camera, that the truth is like a paper crane. Once you set it free, it finds its own way home. The aftermath of the board's arrest brought healing in unexpected ways. The Gutierrez mansion, once a fortress of surveillance and suspicion, transformed into a true sanctuary for their reconstructed family. Emil's recovery, once freed from Marina's tampering, progressed rapidly. The paper cranes in his room now flew freely, no longer weighed down by secrets. During his physical therapy sessions, he had not just Claire's support, but also Alice, who understood his journey intimately. The medications make you feel like you're floating sometimes, Alice told him during one particularly difficult session. Like you're not quite real. Emil nodded, pushing through another exercise. But now we're anchored, he replied, reaching for Claire's hand. We have people who see us really see us. Gabriel's role as family documentarian evolved into something deeper. His recordings, once tools for justice, became a chronicle of healing. He captured small moments, Claire and Alexander dancing in the kitchen when they thought no one was watching, Emil taking his first unassisted steps, Marina and Alice slowly rebuilding their relationship through shared art therapy. I kept recording, he explained to Claire one evening, because I was afraid it might not be real, that I'd wake up back in foster care, alone again. Claire hugged him tightly. Some things you don't need to document, little brother. Some things you just need to live. Marina's rehabilitation took a different path. With proper psychiatric care and Alice's presence, she began confronting the trauma that had driven her actions. The hospital board's manipulation had exploited her existing mental health issues, turning her maternal protectiveness into something toxic. During family dinner, now a nightly ritual, Marina watched Claire helping Emil cut his food, saw how naturally Alexander's hand found Claire's, observed Gabriel and Alice sharing secret smiles over inside jokes. I wanted to control love, she admitted quietly, but you can't control it, you can only let it grow. Alexander's transformation was perhaps the most profound. The security cameras came down one by one, replaced by family photographs. Each blank screen removed was like lifting a weight from his shoulders. The mansion's halls, once cold with surveillance, warmed with laughter and life. Sarah would have loved this, he told Claire as they watched the children, and they were all their children now, in different ways playing board games in the library. She always said a home needs chaos to be real. The really beautiful moments were the unplanned ones, like when Emil, during one of his stronger days, asked Alice to help him make paper cranes for the hospital children, or when Gabriel caught Marina teaching Claire her secret recipe for hot chocolate, the same one she'd made for Alice years ago. Family isn't what you control, Emil observed wisely during one such moment. It's what you let go of. The security footage that had once been used for surveillance now captured different scenes: impromptu dance parties in the kitchen, late-night storytelling sessions, wheelchair races in the hallway strictly against doctor's orders but enthusiastically supported by Claire when Alexander wasn't looking. Even the garden, where Sarah's evidence had been hidden, bloomed anew. The roses that had protected her secrets now watched over family picnics and stargazing sessions. Marina and Alice planted new flowers together, their hands working in sync as they rebuilt more than just a garden. One evening, as summer faded into autumn, they gathered for a special dinner. The table that had once hosted tense confrontations now overflowed with dishes everyone had helped prepare, even Emil's slightly lopsided cake that Claire had helped him bake. "I have an announcement," Alexander said, standing. "The hospital board's assets have been seized, and I've been thinking about what to do with them." He revealed his plan, transforming the corrupted facilities into a network of family healing centers, places where medical care would come with emotional support, where families separated by illness could stay together, where truth and transparency would be fundamental principles. And he added, looking at Claire, "I'd like you to help me run them, all of you, each bringing your own experience, your own wisdom." The proposal wasn't just about business. It was about transformation, turning places of pain into spaces of healing, converting their shared trauma into shared purpose. That night, after the others had gone to bed, Claire found Emil in his room, making one last paper crane. "What's this one for?" she asked. "For us," he said, releasing it to fly in the soft breeze from his window. "For everything we lost and everything we found." The crane soared briefly before landing on his nightstand, joining others in a colorful family of paper wings. Each one represented a piece of their story: the pain, the healing, the love that had ultimately saved them all. "You know what Mum wrote in her last diary entry?" Emil asked sleepily as Claire tucked him in. "She said that sometimes families aren't born or made, they're rescued. Just like you rescued us, Claire." Claire kissed his forehead, thinking of all the ways they had rescued each other. "No, sweetheart, we rescued ourselves, together." 1 year after the board's downfall, the Gutierrez Family Healing Center opened its doors. The building, once a monument to corruption, had been transformed. Glass walls replaced hidden surveillance, Gardens bloomed where secret files once molded, and families filled halls that had echoed with conspiracy. Emil cut the ribbon from his walker, no longer needing the wheelchair but keeping it nearby as a reminder. His hands, steady now without Marina's secret additions, held the scissors with pride. Claire stood beside him, her reinstated medical license prominently displayed in the center's lobby alongside a wall of paper cranes. Each crane represents a family we've helped, Emil explained to visitors. When they leave here, they make one to add to our collection. The center's success stories mounted quickly. Marina and Alice worked with parents struggling with control issues, their own journey serving as both warning and inspiration. Gabriel developed a youth support program for separated siblings, ensuring no child felt as lost as he once had. Alexander's transformation from suspicious watchdog to trusted healer became complete when he removed the last security camera, replacing it with a simple suggestion box. "We trust truth to find its own way now," he declared. The resolution brought unexpected peace to all involved. The board members' trials ended in lengthy sentences, their corruption exposed beyond doubt by Sarah's meticulous evidence. Marina's mental health improved steadily under proper care, her relationship with Alice growing stronger through honest communication. Most remarkably, the center began receiving referrals from an unlikely source, the prison system. Former board members, facing their own guilt, started directing families they had once harmed toward healing. One morning, Claire found Emil in the garden, surrounded by roses his mother had planted. He was reading Sarah's diary again, but this time without sadness. "Mom knew this would happen," he said, showing her the final pages. "She wrote that truth doesn't just set you free, it builds something new from what was broken." The resolution wasn't just about justice served or wrongs righted. It was about transformation. The family that had formed through crisis had become something extraordinary: healers who understood wounds, protectors who recognized vulnerability, truth-tellers who respected the power of words. In the center's main hall, they hung a simple plaque bearing Sarah's last written words, "Love sees clearer than cameras ever could." Below it, security monitors once used for surveillance now displayed only one thing: the growing collection of paper cranes, each representing a family finding its way home. "You know what's funny?" Emil remarked during their first anniversary celebration. "Marina thought she was destroying us by bringing us together. But sometimes the things meant to break us end up making us whole." The resolution brought not just an ending, but a beginning. Each new family entering their center became part of their extended story, each healing adding another chapter to their shared redemption. The healing process manifested differently for each family member, weaving their individual recoveries into a tapestry of collective strength. Emil's physical transformation became the most visible symbol of their triumph. Free from manipulated medications, his body grew stronger daily. The child who once couldn't leave his wheelchair now led tours of the center's gardens, his walker decorated with paper cranes. His medical charts, once a source of despair, showed consistent improvement. "It's not just my body healing," he explained to a young patient. "It's like my whole world got better. When the bad stuff stops, you find out how strong you really are." Claire's healing came through her work. Each child she treated helped mend a piece of her broken past. Her office, once Marina's domain, became a safe haven where worried parents found hope and frightened children found courage. The medical license on her wall represented not just professional restoration but personal redemption. Alexander discovered healing through trust. He learned to silence his suspicious nature, to believe in people's goodness again. The security room that once dominated his life became an art therapy space, where Marina and Alice helped children express their fears through painting. But Sarah would have loved this, he often said, watching families leave stronger than they arrived. She always believed in healing through connection, not control. Gabriel's healing emerged through storytelling. He started a support group for siblings separated by circumstances beyond their control. His recordings, once weapons for justice, became tools for teaching empathy. Each shared story helped piece together his own fragmented childhood. Marina and Alice's healing journey proved the most profound. Their weekly art therapy sessions evolved into deeply honest conversations about control, love, and forgiveness. Together, they helped other mothers and daughters rebuild trust shattered by illness or intervention. But pain doesn't have to be passed down, Marina told her therapy group. We can choose to break the cycle. The mansion itself seemed to heal. Rooms that had witnessed conspiracy and suffering now rang with laughter. The garden where Sarah had hidden her evidence bloomed more vibrantly than ever, as if celebrating their recovery. Even the paper cranes evolved. What began as Emil's coping mechanism became a center-wide tradition. Each family created a crane before leaving, writing their hopes inside. The collection grew, a flowing river of colored paper carrying countless stories of healing. One evening, during a quiet moment, Claire found Emil adding a new crane to their family's private collection. "What did you write in this one?" she asked. "Thank you," he replied simply. "To everyone who helped us heal. To Mom for protecting us. To Marina for choosing to change. To you and Dad for believing in love. To Gabriel for keeping truth alive. To Alice for showing us how to forgive." The crane joined others on his windowsill, catching the sunset's light. In its shadow, Claire saw their family's truth healing wasn't about erasing the past, but about transforming it into something beautiful. 5 years after the center's opening, the Gutierrez family gathered for a special celebration. The occasion Emil's first steps without any support, a milestone that symbolized their collective journey. The mansion's grand hall, once a showcase of wealth and power, had been transformed into a warm family space. Photos chronicled their journey: Claire and Alexander's wedding, Emil's gradual recovery, Gabriel's college graduation, Marina and Alice's first art exhibition, and countless moments of everyday joy. "Remember when we used to be afraid of this place?" Emil asked, walking confidently across the room to adjust a crooked frame. The photograph showed their first family dinner after the truth emerged, all of them looking exhausted but relieved, healing already beginning. The center had grown beyond their wildest dreams. What started as one building now comprised a network of healing spaces across the country. Each location followed their core principle: transparency heals, truth liberates, and family transcends biology. Marina and Alice ran the art therapy program together, their mother-daughter bond strengthening as they helped others heal. Their shared trauma had transformed into shared purpose, their story inspiring others to believe in second chances. Gabriel, now a renowned documentary filmmaker, created a series about families overcoming institutional abuse. His work brought change to healthcare policies nationwide, ensuring no other family would suffer as theirs had. Alexander and Claire led the center together, their partnership extending far beyond marriage. They balanced each other perfectly, his strategic mind complementing her nurturing spirit. Their love story became legendary among patients: the suspicious widower and the wronged nurse who found healing in each other. Emil, now a teenager, showed no traces of his former frailty. He planned to study medicine, determined to become the kind of doctor who saw patients as people first. His collection of paper cranes had grown so large that they needed a special room, each one representing a family's journey toward wholeness. Sarah's presence remained strong. Her diary had been published, becoming a guidebook for healthcare reform. Her garden flourished, tended now by all of them together. Her final message, "Love sees clearer than cameras," became the center's motto. On this particular evening, as they celebrated Emil's achievement, a new paper crane joined the collection. Inside, each family member had written a single word: Emil strength, Claire faith, Alexander trust, Gabriel truth, Marina redemption, Alice hope. The crane, crafted from paper marbled in all their favorite colors, took flight in the gentle breeze from an open window. It soared briefly before landing atop Sarah's photograph, as if blessed by her memory. "You know what Mum would say," Emil remarked, standing tall without support. "She'd say this isn't just an ending, it's a beginning." They stood together, this unlikely family forged in adversity and tempered by love, watching the sunset paint the paper cranes in shades of gold. Their story had become more than a tale of survival. It was a testament to the healing power of truth, the strength of forgiveness, and the unbreakable bonds of chosen family. In the end, love had indeed seen clearer than any camera ever could. The end. The end. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of love, redemption, and healing. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to never miss our upcoming storytelling moments. Share this video with loved ones who might need a reminder that healing is possible and family bonds can overcome any obstacle. Don't forget to drop a comment below sharing how this story resonated with you. Your thoughts and experiences might inspire others who are going through similar challenges. Together we create a community of hope and understanding. Remember, every like, share, and subscription helps us reach more hearts with stories that matter.